Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Universalist Church, in which love is the spirit. We're very glad you are here today, whether you're here in the sanctuary or anywhere in the world, especially those visiting or returning from a time away. I'm Gretchen Fountain, one of your co-moderators on the Board of Trustees. If you are a visitor, we hope that you'll talk with our welcome team or visit our webpage, www.westhartforduu.org, to learn more about us. Our guest book or online contact page will help you get onto our electronic mailing list, which is still the best way for us to stay connected. We look forward to helping you become part of the Universalist Church. Though we're in a season of colds, flu, and COVID, numbers are finally dropping again. Masks are always welcome here, and we encourage you to stay up to date with your vaccinations. If you would like a mask, our ushers can provide one for you. After worship, we will have fellowship in Fisk Hall and through Zoom. If you need help finding your way to Fisk Hall for fellowship hour, any member of the church will be happy to guide you. Just follow all of us coffee-seeking beings in that direction. If you can find the link for Zoom on your weekly news or our Breeze calendar. If you aren't getting the weekly news, please sign up for it on our website. And now, I invite you all to take a moment, make your mobile phones silent, turn off your email, put away your keyboards, and settle in for worship.
With the For those of you at home, please pull out your chalices and light them as we light ours here in the sanctuary as well. And we light this chalice holding in mind that our chalices, the chalices of our hearts and our spirits, hold all of who we are. Our goodness, and the parts of us that are still learning to be good. Our wisdom, and the foolishnesses that we cannot yet let go. Our love, and the places we have not yet allowed love to go within and beyond us. Within this community, within our covenants, may we allow our goodness, our wisdom, and our love to flourish, to pick us up, to carry us, to move us into the wholeness that is possible, that which helps us grow into the beloved community, a community in which all are known and respected, given space to flourish as well. And may this be true for every person, every community, every part of life. Our opening hymn is number 18 in the gray hymnal, number 18. Please rise in body or in spirit, in the sanctuary or wherever you are, as we sing together. Please join me in speaking the words of our affirmation, our covenant. It is printed in your order of service and in the description online. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please be seated.
So I see a little bit of red today, a little bit of pink and some purple, all those colors that signify love. So I wanted to share with everyone the idea of different kinds of love. So the ancient Greeks loved love so much
they talked about 4 different kinds. And if we could just repeat, so eros, storge, philia, agape. How many recognize at least one of those words? Okay. So eros is like the love between 2 parents or a couple of folks who are dating. And storge is the love that you feel within your own family for siblings or parents. Philia, even though it sounds like family, so it's a little confusing. Philia, if you think of Philadelphia, so you have the love for a friend, the deep love for a friend. And then you have this great big love called agape. And so it kind of absorbs all of those other kinds of loves, and it asks you to maybe even love people you don't like all that much. It's a big kind of love that uplifts everyone. And some people say it comes from within, some people say it comes from God. But just think of it as a love that can help you shine light, just like this does, on all the different kinds of love in the world.
The song that we will use to sing our children and their teachers out to their classes is number 413 in the gray hymnal. It's called Go Now in Peace, and it actually talks about some of that love. So let us sing our children and their teachers off to their classes. I wish there were a way to work the word agape into that song a little more effectively. Just to kind of hammer that point home, our universalist love is that massive, all-consuming, all-embracing love of agape. And in that spirit, we gather our offering each week. And then we give half of it away into the world to do the work that we might not be able to do ourselves, but we know matters so much. When you offer your time, talent, and treasure here, you help us serve our members, friends, and wider community. And as part of that service, we do share our offering each week. This month, we're sharing it with Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, also known as BLUU. BLUU was founded in 2015 at the Movement for Black Lives convening in Cleveland, Ohio. And the dozen or so Black UUs in attendance there imagined a cohesive, national, vibrant community of Black Unitarian Universalists. And so BLUU evolved from those conversations. It is committed to expanding the power and capacity of Black UUs within our faith, providing support, information, and resources for Black Unitarian Universalists, and creating justice and liberation for Black folk throughout our faith. To give electronically, you can use the QR codes on your order of service. You can use the links in the description or on our website. And here in the sanctuary, our offering will now be gratefully received. May these gifts, so generously given, sustain the work that we do together, the life of this community, and the changes and wonders in the world that we can create with just a little bit more generosity in this wider world of which we are certainly a part. Thank you. Thank you. Please rise, in body or in spirit, as we speak our congregational reading. It's number 639 in the gray hymnal. It's entitled Love One Another. I'll read the words in Roman type, and we'll speak together the words in italics. Let us love one another, because love is from God. Whoever does not love God does not know God, for God is love. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. There is no fear in love, for perfect love casts out fear. Those who say, I love God, and hate their brothers and sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us. Let's join in singing our doxology. Praise God for love we all may share. Praise God for beauty everywhere. Praise God for hope of good to be. Praise God for truth that makes us free. Amen. Please be seated. As we begin our time of prayer and meditation, I don't have anything to share with you on behalf of the congregation today, but I do want to call our hearts and our minds and our attention to some of the things that are happening in our world that are on our minds and hearts already. I know that many of us are aware of the tens of thousands of people who have died in Turkey and in Syria as a result of the earthquakes there. I know we continue to be aware of the war in Ukraine. We cannot help but be aware of the challenges that happen here in our own country as well. In addition to the problems of racism and mass violence, now we have an environmental problem in Ohio that is profound, with flames and poison gases as a result of a train derailment. Let us hold all of the people and the lands that are suffering under these problems. Please take a moment in stillness and in prayer with me. For this is a moment to stop, to rest. With everything that we know in the world, this is a time to find peace within ourselves, with others. A moment to breathe, to be still, to find the peace that silences the call of devices and advertising and endless information. For a moment, even just a moment, to set aside the worries of your daily life, to slow the pace of everything so that you can hear or feel. to be aware of what is normally beyond your grasp. And so in this moment, listen for compassion. Open yourself to hope. Allow the deepest parts of your being to speak their needs and wants. Allow yourself to know surprise, contentment, joy. Create room for love in all its forms. Let us take a moment in stillness together to attend to that which is normally beyond our awareness. And as the small noises of one another bring us back to the room, allow yourself to offer forgiveness, to imagine seeking reconciliation, to know that these things that you are aware of can prompt you to take action, to heal what is hurt, to celebrate, to wonder, to seek, to help, and hopefully, now and then, to simply be. May it be so. Amen.
Our first reading is from Lust by Simon Blackburn and shows how difficult it can be to speak about lust without degrading sexuality. Immanuel Kant writes, "Love, as human affection, is love that wishes well, is amicably disposed, promotes the happiness of others, and rejoices in it. But now it is plain that those who merely have sexual inclination love the person from none of the foregoing motives of true human affection, are quite unconcerned for their happiness, and will even plunge them into the greatest unhappiness simply to satisfy their own inclination and appetite. Sexual love makes of the loved person an object of appetite. As soon as the other person is possessed and the appetite sated, they are thrown away. In Kant's picture, lust objectifies the other person, using them as a mere means, a tool of one's own purposes. It is dehumanizing and degrading, and according to Kant, it is morally forbidden, since you may never use another person as a mere means to satisfy your own ends. Our second reading is from Anam Cara by John O'Donohue. Touch is one of the most immediate and direct of senses. The language of touch is a language in itself. Touch is also subtle and distinctive, and holds within itself great refinement of memory. The world of touch includes the whole world of sexuality. This is probably the most tender aspect of human presence. When you are sexual with someone, you have let them right into your world. The world of sexuality is a sacred world of presence. The world of eros is one of the devastated casualties of contemporary commercialism and greed. We desperately need to retrieve gentle and sacred words of touch in order to be able to engage our full human nature. Touch offers the deepest clue to the mystery of encounter, awakening, and belonging.
of the 7 deadly sins sermons that I have planned for this year, this is the one that sounds like the most fun and the most nervous-making, and the one that I'm not sure we all want to talk about too much in church of all places, but I'm just going to say it so that it's said right up front: sex. Whew. All right. The word is out there. The truth is, we cannot talk about lust without talking about sex and sexuality. And sometimes that is challenging to consider or even say just about anywhere, including church. And it shouldn't be. It's a weird remnant of our particular history in this country, our religious background of Puritanism, perhaps, that makes it difficult for us to talk about that, whereas we talk about guns and violence with no problem whatsoever. Church is where we talk about all sorts of things that are important in life. And given how much time and energy and awkwardness and ambiguity is given to sex and sexuality in the wider world, we clearly need to be talking about it in church. Especially because sex is so often paired with sin, or naughtiness, or lust. When I was a freshman in high school, my English teacher recognized that I was a little bit bored in class, and he said, "I have something that I want you to read. We'll talk about it, once a week, but this can kind of give you something else to chew on." He handed me the Canterbury Tales. And I found myself reading all of these different stories, lots and lots of different little stories, trying to read them in Middle English sometimes. Wasn't always easy, but was kind of fun. And then I got to The Wife of Bath's Tale. If any of you know English literature, and particularly the Canterbury Tales, you know that The Wife of Bath's Tale is earthy. She is not disinclined from talking about the realities of married life, which for her happened 5 different times. She spoke a lot about what it was to have eros and to deal with sexuality in the context of her relationships. And I remember reading this as a freshman and my eyes growing very, very wide, because I was a student at a Lutheran parochial school. And it was my English teacher in this Lutheran parochial school that had handed me this book that was perhaps diplomatic but also clear about what bodies might do together. It actually was quite a good education. It was worth reading both from the experience of literature, but also because it said to me, there is a place to discuss who we are and what we are in many different ways, even within a religious context. It also got me to thinking about what is the difference between love and sex and lust. And as time has gone on, I have continued to think about those things and realized that we need to be very, very wise when we talk about lust in particular, and separate it from the idea of sexuality, because they are not the same thing. When I started preparing this, so many people that wrote about sexuality and lust were talking about them as though they were the same sort of thing, or that they really wanted to reclaim the idea of lust, which meant that they wanted it to be okay to be passionate and sensual and driven by desire. And if that's all that lust was, well, sure, that sounds like fun. Let's reclaim it. I am all for reclaiming the goodness of the pleasures of the body, whatever they might be. But I'm not terribly excited about domesticating or reclaiming this idea of lust, because it is the name for the sin of how desire can be broken or contorted or made profoundly selfish. So lust is known by the objectification of everything else in service of one's own pleasure. It is not the same as gluttony. Gluttony basically ignores what we are experiencing in the present in favor of everything else. It is the inability to appreciate what you have now. And then, therefore, to keep consuming and consuming and consuming because you're only thinking about what's next. But lust is the inability to see the value in anything except as it relates to your own satisfaction. And in that way, you can be overwhelmed by lust for many things. But I'm going to keep today's conversation on sexuality and relationships, love and desire, and the way in which they become twisted by selfishness. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm publicly that sexuality is not just one thing, one framework, one simple set of behaviors. We recognize the goodness in many kinds of sexual orientation. We recognize that it is okay to not be particularly interested in sex and sexuality at all. We understand that there are many different ways to exist as people in relationship to this part of what it is to be human. And we can look throughout the ages to discover that people have approached it from a wide variety of points of view, no different than today. Sappho wrote beautifully about the desire between women. But at the same time, in ancient Greece, there were those advocating for and enjoying celibacy. In the Canterbury Tales, the wife of Bath speaks about sexuality as for pleasure and reproduction. And some of the other tales are clearly uncomfortable with the idea of sexuality in any way, shape, or form. It is not to be discussed, and better yet, hidden at all costs. There's ancient Persian poetry addressing love between men, and also plenty of writing and philosophy on heterosexuality too. Throughout history, there have been artworks and teachings from all around the world that deal with sexuality, that deal with gender, that deal with the nature of love. And there have also been times throughout the world when what is acceptable in terms of any of this is strictly prescribed. Throughout the ages, people get nervous about sex and sexuality, and they become determined to make rules about whether one must be in a sexual relationship or not, and if so, how that relationship is made, how it occurs, and then with how many people, of what sexes and genders, and in what ways and what acts people may use in order to engage this part of human existence. So much writing about sexuality from theological and philosophical perspectives is how it must be controlled. Perhaps some of you are familiar with the early Christian theologian Augustine. He did us no favors. He didn't differentiate between sex and lust theologically for everyone else, largely because he couldn't distinguish those things for himself. He used his own anxieties as the model for how everyone else must also exist. And then Immanuel Kant and Sigmund Freud both speak about sexual desire as though it is fundamentally unhealthy. Kant writes, "Sexual love makes of the loved person an object of appetite. As soon as the other person is possessed and the appetite sated, they are thrown away." But this isn't necessarily true. Freud wrote an essay entitled "On the Universal Tendency to Debasement in the Sphere of Love." Simon Blackburn writes, "Freud works with an opposition between tender, affectionate feelings on the one hand and sensual feelings on the other. He says that sex is either too disgusting to engage in, or when engaged in, not nearly disgusting enough to be gratifying. Good grief! I find it really sad, to be honest, that his experiences led him to conceive of sex in such a miserable way. And truthfully, I find it infuriating that he inflicted that on the rest of us and that people bought into it. These and other writers might be trying to avoid lust, but they commit another act of selfishness when you're thinking about desire. They are seeking to limit everyone's sexuality by controlling everyone else based on their own personal concerns. Rather than figuring out how to be okay with themselves and their own desires in the world, they look at everyone else and say, I'm like this, and therefore you must be too. How incredibly selfish. How profoundly unhealthy. And now we're stuck with these ways of thinking and acting and framing the world that perpetuate societal norms that are not healthy for everyone. And then for these writers and thinkers, in their own personal concerns, they have conflated sex and lust. Most of these same acts that can be done out of love can also be done in lust. But it's not about the acts. These two things are not about what we do. The existence and practice of sex and sexuality are not the issue, no matter how many religions or teachers or priests or governments try to say otherwise. I find it abhorrent and deeply sad that religion is so often the source of these kinds of teachings. I also know that it's not terribly surprising. Like mysticism, which religions also try to control, sexuality is experiential. It's not theoretical, it's not just in the mind, because it's of the body and the heart and the spirit. It is difficult to classify and understand. It's difficult to articulate, but it is very, very easy to moralize upon, to try to control that which seems somewhat uncontrollable. When religion gets it right, it recognizes that the problem with lust is how we treat ourselves and one another. Is it with respect? Or is it with contempt? Is it seeing in another person or in the self something that is grand and glorious and worthy of love? Or is it just a matter of seeing something that can be used? When religion doesn't get it right, it is because sexuality is powerful. It can be overwhelmingly wonderful and lead us into joy and discovery and the deepening of relationship. But it also has the ability to push us to do foolish things, make some bad choices, date the wrong person, discover that perhaps we're not as civilized or as tidy as we imagine ourselves to be. It's a matter of biology, really. Animals in the throes of heat are virtually unstoppable. They will tear down fences to get to one another. And humans are not so far removed from that evolutionary impulse. And so it's not surprising that there are many who fear this force that is so unlike our reasoning minds. They're afraid that we cannot actually control ourselves, and yet we can. They fear that there must be hard boundaries put up so that they never have to think about the challenges and wonders and possibilities of sexuality. But we can do this. Because it is so primal, connected to hormones and instincts and parts of the brain we don't control, I can understand those fears and concerns. And when we're first learning about our bodies, say around junior high and high school in this way, right when I was reading The Wife of Bath, I noticed that it was challenging to think about these things. I hadn't thought about them before. I didn't know how to talk about it. I mean, my parents sat me down and said, look, you're going to have younger sisters. This is how that happened. I did understand the mechanics of it. I understood that it was something that brought my parents close together in joy and in love. But to discover what was happening within my own body, I had to learn. I had to spend time figuring it out. And it was awkward, and it was uncomfortable, and it was powerful. And as I grew up, I found that my mind and my heart and my spirit were what were in charge. My body did not take over and turn the rest of me off. I could choose how I would be and who I would be with and in what ways. And this is something that we can give as a gift to one another, to our children. The understanding that this powerful thing that happens is something that is actually good and worthwhile and worth learning about. This is why we have Our Whole Lives as a program in the Unitarian Universalist Church. It's a program that not only teaches about sexuality and about bodies, but it teaches about relationships and respect and how we interrelate. That's what happens when religion gets it right. Sexuality asks us to experience through sensation, not through intellectualism. To go places in our minds and our bodies that most of us don't go to when we're simply going to work or the grocery store or to school. It asks us to pay attention to what it is to touch and be touched. And so John O'Donohue writes in Anam Cara, touch is one of the most immediate and direct of the senses. It includes the whole world of sexuality, perhaps the most tender aspect of human presence. When you are sexual with someone, you let them right into your world. And the world of sexuality is a sacred world of presence. Touch offers the deepest clue to the mystery of encounter, awakening, and belonging. Touch is not always sexual, of course, but it is always relational. It's a way of connecting with someone or something else. And so when O'Donohue says that touch informs us about sacred mysteries of being, that actually really rings true to me. It also tells me why I am so deeply insistent that sexuality and lust must be understood as different things in the world. To debase all desire, all sexuality with the sin of lust, is to undermine the potential of our presence with one another. It is actually to fail in our covenants as Unitarian Universalists. Our very first UU principle, to affirm the worth and dignity of every person, simply does not allow for lust. So, as a religion that has a practice of acknowledging different forms of sexuality as valid and good and affirming, that all people should have the ability to decide whether and how they will express their sexualities, we must avoid lust. We must avoid using one another for our own satisfactions. But that's not about particular acts or how people choose to be in relationships. Earlier in the service, there were a number of moments where we used the word God probably more frequently in one service than we normally do in the course of a month. Sexuality is often talked about as though God wants it a very specific way. But in our history, our theology doesn't require that to be true. So rather than defining and limiting sexuality based on procreation or a sense that God wants it this way, instead, I think we need to learn to lean back into this idea of God as love, of these 4 different kinds of love, all held within agape, that greatest, most inclusive kind of love. And if we do that, then we can avoid the brokenness and damage of lust through an ethical and relational and covenantal experience and point of view. This is what we teach our kids in OWL, and hopefully what we know to be true for ourselves. Healthy sexuality is consensual, period. If consent cannot be given, then nothing should happen. Healthy sexuality has integrity. And by that I mean that people follow the agreed upon rules of their relationships, neither weaseling their way around them, nor breaking them in secret, but rather being truthful and communicative, participating appropriately and speaking openly with one another. Healthy sexuality does not harm its participants. That doesn't mean that sometimes we don't experience something that we aren't sure we're really all on board with in a moment, and then in those moments we can simply say, no, this isn't what I want to have happen right now. We always have the ability to say no. That also means we also always have the ability to say yes, and it is our choice, when it is healthy sexuality, to do so. A healthy relationship should nurture and support, not tear down and destroy. A healthy understanding of sexuality does not allow any one of us to say that based on our own hang-ups, concerns, uncertainties, anxieties, that everyone else has to do the same thing that we want so that we never have to know that something else is happening. We don't get to determine for everyone else in the world what their experience should be. Nor does Freud, nor does Kant, nor does Augustine. A covenantal ethic of sexuality, based in our own practice and tradition, grants us all the freedom to live as we are made, as we choose, as long as we do no harm. It asks us to welcome one another into a life that is lived fully and well. In relationships of friendship and love, perhaps sexual, perhaps not, but always acknowledging the full worth and dignity of one another. And so we can appreciate Sappho and the wife of Bath and lots of other perspectives as well. We can celebrate a variety of relationship structures, a variety of sexualities. By bringing our religion to bear on our experiences of desire and sexuality and relationships, we can free ourselves from the selfishnesses and unhealthy limitations that others seek to place upon us. And I hope free us from the selfishness of desire that we know as lust, too. Instead, may we, in whatever way we choose to exist with one another, always see each other as full human beings with worth and dignity and agency. Never for our own satisfactions, never just to be used, but instead to be celebrated and loved and known. May it be so. Our closing hymn is number 1029 in the BLUU hymnal, number 1029, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. Please rise in body or in spirit. Let us speak together our unison benediction. It's printed in your order of service and in the description online. Engage with the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Please be seated and remain for our post.
choose